fishermen from Grand Bank had been away on a long, rough trip, this was a sight for sore eyes. Sometimes they could see just the beam from the lighthouse. There would be so much fog in Fortune Bay. This town was the center of the Grand Bank schooner fishery. It's a safe bet that most of the older men here were once employed as dorymen, catching the cod that would be salted and traded to Europe or the Caribbean. It was a prosperous place in the good times. The merchants who owned the schooners built themselves fine homes. One of the most impressive was built in 1917 by Captain John Thornhill. Today it belongs to Gar Fizzard, a historian and educator who lived in Grand Bank as a boy. Fizzard has written a book about the history of the town.
The whole history of the bank fishery has been one of ups and downs. It's fluctuated. And a town like Grand Bank, which was tied so closely to it, the fortunes fluctuated in exactly the same proportion, obviously.
Captain Thornhill's wife might have come up to this lookout when her husband was late returning. You'll see steel draggers entering port today instead of schooners, but Grand Bank has always been a fishing port.
In that period, especially from, let's say, 1890 to about 1920, that period, and even extending into the 30s, Grand Bank was the economic center, especially of Fortune Bay. The whole economy of Fortune Bay revolved around Grand Bank.
The schooner and dory fishery was encouraged by the British colonial government because it was thought there was too much dependence on the inshore fishery. The government paid a bounty to those who built vessels over 30 tons. The first schooners started fishing from Grand Bank in the 1880s, and at the peak in 1911 there were 48, employing nearly 700 fishermen. Leo Pope and Gordon Thibault were both dorymen on schooners in the 1930s. In those times, you were fortunate to have a job at all.
How many years were you a doryman on a schooner?
Well, I guess I was around 9 years anyway. About 9 or 10 years, something like that.
That must have been really hard work, was it?
Well, it was something we had to do, and we just had to take it in stride and forget it was hard.
What time
Not even think it was hard.
What time of the day would you start your work?
Well, you leave the vessel when you start fishing. As soon as you bite enough to see the compass. And you'll be get aboard probably dark. But now you'll be going and coming as the day
all day
on.
long?
Bringing your fish, biting your dory, or taking up and moving, sitting again.
Tell me about all the money you made doing all this hard work.
Well, when I come out there in 1938, $260.
$260 for how long?
Oh, we started sometime in February. We ended up in October.
Mr. Thibault, I wanted to ask you about that. Do you remember thinking about working this hard for this much money? Or did you think that that was a fair deal, or that you were poorly paid or well paid?
Well, we know it wasn't a good deal. But not too much could do about it then, them times. You worked, you had a job, and, well, you, like I say, you start out in March, we didn't know how much you were going to make. You know, fishing was a gamble, you know that. But we know we wasn't getting paid, but as we should have been paid. You worked along, you know. Just like the old saying, see, you never made enough money, very lots of fun out of it.
Young men, as Tom Antle was then, hoped and prayed for a berth on a schooner.
You'd like to be at it, you know, you see other men at it, and, well, I would love to get out there. Don't bother be a man volunteer for to take you.
I'll take Indore with me this year. That's the way it went on.
Who would you talk to get a berth? Was it the skipper?
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah.
Were they, the skippers of these schooners, were they considered to be pretty important people?
Oh, they were important people then. You know, a man got a chance to go fishing on one of them vessels then. You were kind of a man then. Yeah. We started fishing around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Fished until 3 or 4 in the evening. In that schooner now we're using 24 lines of dory. We make 3 hauls on them a day. And it made no difference. I didn't want to ride cam either. So if you really could do it, you had to get out and make them 3 hauls. I didn't think it was so hard as it was when I got at it, you know. I managed to get through it.
The 2 men would fish all day, and when the dory was full, they row back to the schooner to unload their catch. When they'd get on board the schooner again, all hands would pitch in to clean up the fish. Fine, large fish, like you don't see anymore. All would be split, washed, salted, and stowed away. When all the work was done, they could eat. Rough grub, the dorymen called it, salt beef, potatoes, and of course fish. Early the next morning, before it was light, they would bait their trawls for that day's fishing. Each man baited 2 tubs of gear, 10 lines to a tub, each line 60 fathoms long.
When you were working in the fish, did you ever get the boils and the welts on your hands and arms?
Yeah, they used to call them pups, water pups. You had to suffer it out, you know, some suffering you go through. And the more you roll up your sleeves, the further they go, you know. You shove your hand down in the bucket of cold water, you think it was hot. That's the kind of a feeling, you know, it'd be in your arm. You think it was burning you instead of being cold.
People must have had bad infections from all that.
Or some people had a lot of bad infections, yeah.
And no treatment, of course, because
No treatment, no.
you're at sea.
I had a shipmate one time, Amber's break from Spanish Room. He was on the schooner with me. And he used to be down the whole salting, you know, salting fish. He'd shove his hand down into the salt, and his arms would be just same as raw meat. And I said to him one day, I said, Ambers, and how do you stand that? He just looked at me and laughed. He said, pardon, what did you say?
No good to complain about it, eh?
No good to complain, that's the way he took it, yeah.
When the schooner was full of fish, they would set sail for home. Their part was over. The fish was caught, salted, and ready for drying. On shore, the fish became the responsibility of the beach women. Teams of women, wearing their distinctive sunbonnets and aprons, laid fish out on the beach rocks to dry. The people of Grand Bank covered acres of land with beach rocks to create huge drying areas. The beaches can still be seen today, just outside the door of the Seamen's Museum, although houses are built on some of the beaches now.
I'm convinced personally that in fact the beach women could make or break a ship's catch, because it was a very, very difficult kind of process. And if she didn't know her business, then in fact the catch could be lost. So they had a very important part to play in that. And looking back at it now, I don't think they got their recognition either financially or socially either.
Sis Welsh is 62 now. When she went to work drying fish on the beach, she was the youngest there, just barely a teenager. Mrs. Welsh, how old were you when you went to work on the beach?
13, around 13.
That was young, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very young, but I guess we just had to get out and do something, you know, get some money.
How did you get into it? Did somebody else say, come along with me?
No, we just go and, you know, just go and ask for a place on the beach. Like if you needed anything, like I needed my glasses, and I just went and went down to, I think I worked with Aunt Johnny Lee then, and I just asked for a place on the beach. And I went there then,
Was she one of the boss ladies?
yeah, she was one of the bosses there. And so that summer, like I made $25. And I bought my glasses, was 13.
So you cleared $12?
Well, something like that. And you didn't clear like $25 because time you get to the end of the year, you didn't have very much.
The fish would be washed and the water pressed out of it before it was carried in horse-drawn wagons to the beaches. There the women would lay it out neatly in rows, row after row, all day long, until it was time to start picking it up again. The partly dried fish would be stacked in piles and covered overnight.
People would be down there spreading it. Well, they spread it like head and tail, like that. See, and then the beach would be covered. What we spread, probably we start 3 o'clock for to take it off.
So everything that went down had to come up again?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, everything spread. Well, the first lot we spread in the mornings. That would be the first lot we start taking up. By the time we get to the next lot, well, that's at the same amount of time, right?
So gathering fish up and down all day?
All day, all day.
What if you had rainstorm?
Well, the rainstorm wouldn't hurt the fish then, see, because it'd be tied down with the canvas.
What about all the fish you had spread out on the rocks?
Well, if the rain, well, we used to go and try to get it up, and sometimes we'd be down there in the rain, sometimes we'd be really wet.
You had to hurry.
Yeah, we used to have to hurry to get all the fish out. We used to have a lot of fish out. We spread till dinner time, and perhaps we'd go down again and spread till 2 o'clock. And then we start taking it up 4. Some nights it'd be really late before we get home.
Really late? How late?
No, sometimes it'd be 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock sometimes. Sometimes, I mind one time that we was down there down there spreading, and we had to get some flashlights, and that was later in the fall, get some flashlights and see if we had all the fish.
Would you come home at night and just be so tired you'd go right to bed?
Really tired. No, sometimes that you used to have to get your clothes ready for the next day, because lots of times there were you ever wash a bit of clothes or wash your sunshade out or perhaps wash a apron. You wouldn't have that many aprons that you could wear an apron for a week. You know, you used to have it washed and then probably put up bread and bake for the next day, or make a few buns or
Doesn't sound like the kind of a life that teenagers have today.
No way. And then you ever bring water. That was another thing. You used to ever bring your water then and clave splits for like the 4 of the next morning. And after all that.
How long did you work on the beach?
Well, from 13, and I was married 19. So
6 years or so?
yeah, I worked there for 5 or 6 years. I know I was 19 when I worked that summer, and I was married the 28th of December. And I was married a year and 4 months, and then my husband got drowned.
So you were 20 years old and
20
a widow
years old.
with a little baby.
I was married when I was 19, and I was left again when I was 20, with a baby 7 months old.
That must have been hard.
Oh, it was really hard, yeah. really, really bad. But 20-year-old now, I mean, the son's just a child, eh?
It took up to 6 weeks to properly dry the fish. When it was dry, the fish was taken to the storage sheds for culling and grading. It would be graded for size and quality, then it would be packed for shipping to Spain or Portugal or the Caribbean. 92-year-old Harry Thomason skippered many schooners that carried fish to market. He first came to Newfoundland as a 16-year-old sailor on a Danish ship and decided to stay.
I just took my cap and I chucked it over the side. And of course, in order to get my cap, I had to jump over too. So I jumped overboard and got my cap, and after I retrieved my cap, I said, no, I won't go back on board again, but I'll walk out the road and see what I could make out of it.
What he made out of it was his life's work. He tried fishing for a while, but really wanted to be a sailor. He graduated from ordinary seaman to skipper and traveled all over the world.
How much fish would a schooner carry anyway?
Oh, you carry about 4,000 candles of fish. Some of them around, more or less, one to the other.
Now, how long would a voyage take?
The voyage would take 20-odd days from the time that you leave port in Newfoundland until they arrive on the other side.
Over in Portugal, for example?
Yeah, or wherever the case may be.
So when you got over to, say, Porto or Lisbon, then they would all be unloaded?
Yes. Well, in Portugal or Lisbon or any of the countries over on that side, they take it in one candle lots and they put it in a basket on their back and walks ashore on the gangway. Because you land after pier about, perhaps 20 feet. And there's a long skid going down to the schooner's deck. And then the men take it on the back and he walks on up and walks to the store.
And as the skipper of the ship, were you responsible for the final sale of that fish in Portugal?
No.
The sale was already done?
That's all done, yeah.
So you were just responsible for making sure that it was delivered safely?
Delivered, oh, there, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
But you would not come back empty. What would you do then?
You load salt, generally.
Salt that was used back here for the fish?
Yeah. There's an exchange, more or less, for the codfish and the salt.
And you went to the Caribbean and South America?
Oh, yes, yeah.
What would you bring back from down there?
Ballast we come up to Barbados. Barbados we load molasses, or Turks Island, and load salt. And from Jamaica, we go up to a little island called Inagua and take a load of salt there and come back up with it.
So you got to know the Caribbean, I mean, all those little islands and shoals and reefs and everything. That must have been tricky navigation down there.
Sometimes it is, yes. There's some bad shoals. But you steer clear of that. Yeah.
How many times were you shipwrecked in your career?
Oh, 4 or 5 times, something like that. Yeah. What
You were a lucky skipper, weren't you?
Very lucky. I never lost a man. No, never lost a man.
That's something to be proud of, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something to be proud of, it is. Yeah. Perhaps not of my own goodwill, but I never lost nobody.
How's your day, skipper?
Hey, how are you?
Nice to see you around.
The schooner fishery declined steadily until, in 1950, there were only 4 schooners fishing out of Grand Bank. These men went to work at Argentia Naval Base or joined the crew of a steel trawler, the way of the future. The fishery had changed. Dories and schooners disappeared from Grand Bank Harbor.
With the coming of the dragger fishery, Grand Bank began to lose that center or that position. And now, as you probably know, the whole economic center is moving to the east of the peninsula, to Marystown, Salt Pond, and that area. How much of the legacy of those days I still have some influence in Grand Bank, I don't know. I perhaps not in normal times, but I do know that on occasions when the community needs to draw together for some purpose, some crisis or some issue, there's a lot of tapping of that pride, because the older Grand Bankers certainly remember that period with considerable pride. And I think they can pull on that legacy as a motivation to pull together for the future.
Do you fellows ever get together, though, Mr. Pope? Do you ever get together and talk about those days, or is that only when someone like me comes along and asks you?
Oh, sometimes. The young ones don't want to hear that today.
Don't they?
They think that didn't never happen. Things that happen today, if you tell them, they wouldn't believe it.
It's only like a dream now.
They say they were lying.
Like a dream.
That's all it
But it wasn't that long ago, really. Was it?
No. Over 50 years ago, you know. I went fishing for it. That's a long time. It's rough days, and still there was, look back at it now, compared to today, and I was not, you know, there's no comparison whatsoever, right?
Were you a bit sad to see the last fishing schooner?
Yeah, I like to see one around here now. It'd be nice, you know, if it was one here as a museum, it would be nice.
You've been retired a long time now.
Yes.
Do you miss those days when you were sailing?
Oh, yes. On the first of it, until I got used to staying ashore. I made a couple of trips. Somebody got sick and I filled in for the same firm that I worked for. And I made the trips. And that was...
But do you think about it much? I mean, when you're...
No, I don't think about it, not now. I did before. It didn't seem like that, you know, I was doing what I should do. I felt like that, that I was losing something. I didn't have the right thing to do.
For tonight, I hope you'll join us next week when we'll have a profile of two Newfoundland writers, Helen Porter and Wayne Johnston. Until then, thanks for joining us and good night.